Right.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm
Okay,
ready if
I
you
just
guys are.
found one. So
All right, good. You guys ready?
Yep.
Kurt?
yes, sir.
Okay, all right, here we go.
Or what? Sorry, before you start, um, how are you gonna do? Are we gonna just like one each, go back one each, or just is that how you want to do it of our topics? Did he mute us? Is he there?
Hello, Corey.
Get out the defibrillator. Yeah, his video feed's gone too.
Did you ever see his video feed?
Yeah, before I did.
All Cubs players have reported to spring training, and the team starts Cactus League play on Thursday. So we're calling this the start of the 2015 season. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about the top 9 Cubs spring training storylines that interest us this year. All right, hold on. What's going on?
Corey. What's he doing?
All right, sorry about that.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Did you hear my question earlier?
No,
Oh, I was gonna ask if are you just gonna we each gonna do a topic and go through that way? Like
Yeah, I
one, two,
think
three?
so. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, here we go. All Cubs players have All Cubs players have reported to spring training, and the team starts Cactus League play on Thursday. So we're calling this the start of the 2015 season. On this week's episode, we're talking about the top 9 Cubs spring tour. Shit. You know what? I need new batteries.
Okay.
It just dropped down like from 3/4 of the way full to 1/4 of the way, and I know that won't last, so I'll be right back.
Did you drink all that beer, Andy?
No, not even close, man. That barley wine put me to sleep.
Yeah, that stuff's pretty. I mean, I haven't had that particular one, but those strong beers, it just hit you like a ton of bricks.
It's good though. It's really good. I'm
Yeah.
drinking one of them now too. Figured it'd be a nice slow afternoon sipper.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. I want to try more Evil Twin stuff, but like every time I like look at the price tag, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could get a couple of 12 packs. But
Yeah, it's pricey.
But it's kind of cool, like from what I can tell, and I don't really know, but I've heard an interview with him, and like he doesn't actually have a brewery. He uses other people's breweries.
Really?
Yeah, it's just like some Danish dude.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, he should get his own.
I know. I think he says like he doesn't really want to do that because there's so much expense involved,
Oh, okay.
and he can still do this. But the reason his beers are so expensive is because he's so small that he can't quite buy the volume that some of the other breweries can.
Right. Is Mikkeller or Mikkeller? I don't know how you say it. That's a Danish one too, isn't it?
I don't know that one. I mean, I think the guy brews like Evil Twin. He brews here, but he's Danish.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's delicious.
Yeah. He
But
makes so
and
many
most of
different
the
beers
most
too.
of the beers on the shelf I saw were pretty high gravity brews too. So I mean, yeah, it's more expensive, but
Mm-hmm.
you also like if you're trying to get a little buzz going on, it's
Yeah.
not going to take much.
He
Although I
makes
have,
so many different ones. It's crazy.
yeah, I have a Pilsner though from them on deck in the fridge. I haven't even tried yet, so
Cool.
that one's a little bit more lower as far as ABV.
All right,
He's
you
got
guys ready?
one called Even More Jesus.
Yep.
All right,
Yeah.
here we go. All Cubs players have reported to spring training. Man. All Cubs players have reported to spring training, and the team starts Cactus League play on Thursday. So we're calling this the start of the 2015 season. On this week's episode, we're talking about the top 9 Cubs spring training storylines that interest us this year. It's March 1st, 2015, and you're listening to the first episode of our 7th season. This is the 298th episode of the IVMB podcast.
This is Dawn from Plainfield, and this episode is brought to you by... This is Dawn from Plainfield, and this episode is brought to you by IVMB Patreon supporters like me. If you love the Cubs, beer, strong marginal analysis, internet muscle flexes, and the occasional chicken, this is the podcast for you. Go Cubs!
Hi, and thanks for downloading this week's episode of the IVMB podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Corey, and I'm joined by the other 2 hosts of this podcast through a Google Plus Hangout.
Hey, it's Andy.
And Kurt.
Season number 7, guys.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. 7.
I know.
This is very strange.
Yeah, it is, but I don't know. I think as far as what we see from the Cubs, I think season 7. Man, I'm having a hard time saying that. It's going to be not only the best team that we've seen, the best Cubs team that we've seen, but I think it's going to be the most exciting too.
Yeah. Aren't we eligible to be free agents in season 7?
Right,
Isn't that how
right.
that works? We're no longer under team control, but we're still here.
We need to get an agent, I guess.
Yeah, no. We just stick around. We're not getting paid, but we're still here.
So I think we've kind of talked about how bad the Cubs have been in our stretch of podcasting on the Cubs. But only once in the history of this podcast have the Cubs finished over 500. And that was our first season. The Cubs finished with 83 wins.
Man.
And I really kind of wanted to see how many games the Cubs have been over 500 throughout all these seasons. And
That's ambitious.
not many. Well, remember there was wasn't it like the first Quaddy season where they were like 1-1, 2-2, like all the way up to like 15 and like in that first season, weren't they like just hovering a game above or below or right at 500?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think injury struck, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And it all went downhill from there.
Yep. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Cubs spring training games start this week, and we will have Cubs baseball for at least the next 32 weekends. But before we get into the meat of this show, the spring training storylines that most interest us, let's do some housekeeping. Episode number 300 is just a few weeks away. We will record it when Andy and I are in Arizona for spring training. Hopefully the place that we're staying at will have reliable enough internet to get Kurt on the episode. And if you're going to spring training or you live nearby, we will be there March 14th through the 20th. We'll be doing a meetup on March 19th. It's a night game. Cubs will be playing at the Diamondbacks spring training facility. And if you would like to meet up with us, we have a handful of folks that are going to be meeting up that night. Just shoot me an email, Corey, Corey, @ivmb.com. And you can buy the general admission berm seats. I think I don't know what they're called, but the lawn seats or whatever. And so what we're doing with episode number 300 is we'll be sharing some news, making some announcements. We're pretty excited, not only to celebrate a milestone like that, but also to let you know some things that are coming your way, and I'm pretty excited about it. So, and also, if you'd like to join us on our charter bus trip to a Cubs game leaving from the Quad Cities, you can find out all about it at ivmv.com/bus. And that is August 8th is the bus trip. So let's talk some Cubs baseball. Before we get into these storylines, over the last few months we've been discussing the situation with the TV broadcasts of Cubs games here in 2015. We've been expecting some local some stations in local markets outside of Chicagoland to work out some deals to show games. And then on Friday, WAOE My 59, which serves Peoria and Bloomington, announced that they will broadcast 45 games. And as I've said before, I know that other stations or networks in other areas are in negotiations, and I think we'll hear quite a few more of these types of things being announced over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So the Peoria station, it's 45 games. I would imagine those are the WGN 9 games, since that number is the same. I'm just assuming that that's what it is.
Damn, you're good.
I know. Yeah, so those are the games that would be on WGN 9 local in Chicago. So I'm right in between the Quad Cities and Peoria, and I'm right there on the border, according to that website that you shared, or that you've shared on our site, Kurt, TV Fool, I think it is.
Yeah.
So I've looked at that, and I'm right on the border with WAOE. So anyone
Corey's got a radio on top of his house pretty soon, getting local channels.
But I think anyone in central Illinois, probably 40 to 50 miles from Peoria, could probably pick this station up with a digital antenna. It's a good sign that downstate people won't be totally out of luck on a huge number of Cubs games this season. But really, I think the majority of non-techie fans will probably have no idea that these games are even being played on a station like My 59. It's a station that they've probably never even heard of that's in their local market, and don't have a digital antenna if they have cable or dish or something like that. So
it'll be interesting. And even if you don't have one right now, it might be worth grabbing one if you're in that area, because for depending on how close you are, anywhere from like 10 to or 20 maybe to up to however much you want to spend, you could get an antenna and get those games for free.
Right. Yeah. So, and the thing is, I mean, I'm just thinking about the non-techie types that are thinking, well, I have dish, so then how do I have my satellite and dish hooked up at the same time? I just think it's going to be a pain in the butt. I'm thinking of like the retired folks and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a feeling, and I don't even know.
Yeah, but the older people should be pretty familiar with the big antennas.
True.
We always had one growing up.
But they've never had to troubleshoot big antennas and figure out how. I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm going to turn the knob on the TV till it hits 4, 6, or 8.
Like just wiggle it around until the fuzz is less.
Right. It's a little different now.
Yeah. Well, one other note on that, I did contact on the Iowa side and KCRG, which is a Cedar Rapids station, I believe, and they didn't confirm anything, but they did say they have reached out, or that they have expect to hear from the Cubs. So there's no deal in place, but I expect us Iowans will get something similar.
Yeah, and I think it'll probably come out. I mean, it's got to be in the next couple weeks. So we will share whatever we find out, especially for those of you that are in the Quad Cities, like we are in that network or that market. We'll let you know as soon as we hear anything. Okay, so spring training games start this week, so we kind of wanted to preview spring training. So we're going to talk about the 9 spring training storylines that most interest us. So these are not the top storylines necessarily, they're just the ones that appeal to the 3 of us. And each of us will take 3 storylines. So Kurt, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
All right. Well, I'll start with, I guess, this is a pretty big one, and Chris Bryant, and it really has less to do with spring training itself and more to do with what happens when spring training is over, and that is, whether he makes the 25-man roster and starts in Chicago or whether they send him to Iowa. Because of those service time issues, which we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast. But just briefly to recap, if he starts on the 25-man roster, he'll be eligible for free agency after the 2020 season. And if they send him to Iowa for a few weeks, then that pushes that back to 2021. But the catch really is that in the collective bargaining agreement, a team can't hold back a player just for service time. There has to be baseball reasons to hold a player back in the minors when he could be ready for the majors. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how the Cubs handle this. They have to make it baseball related. It shouldn't be too difficult to come up with a sort of short-term baseball reason that he needs to go to Iowa, given where he might play defensively. We don't know if he'll start at third, and if he doesn't, he'll need some time in the outfield. But some recent news is that on Friday there's an article in the Tribune quoting or interviewed Tony Clark, who's the executive director of the MLPA, and he kind of pointed out that they will be monitoring the situation with Bryant and kind of putting the Cubs on notice not to mess around. This has to be about baseball, which we all know it's not. So I think
No funny business.
no, basically. So the Cubs will have to say the right thing. They're going to have to talk about him in terms of baseball and what he needs in development, because I fully expect him to start at Iowa. It seems crazy to me to give up an entire year of a 29, 30-year-old Chris Bryant, who I think will probably be pretty good in 2021. So, we're talking about millions of dollars either to be saved or earned, depending on which side of the fence around here. So, there's something at stake here, and I can understand why both sides would want either to be up or not be up.
It seems like it'll be easiest to justify it through his defense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the angle that the Cubs are going to have to take if they do decide to send him to Iowa.
Yeah, because offensively, that's just there's no argument to be had there.
Well, I mean, unless he strikes out a lot in spring training.
True, but then you're looking at Baez up last year. He clearly needed bat work, and they just sort of threw him to the wolves and said, "Work on it," which I think was okay. But
you can do that at the end of a season where you're not in competition or anything,
Sure.
though. And we really are talking about the matter of a couple weeks here. So I think, yeah, I mean, they can the Players Association can say they're keeping an eye on it, but I don't see how
I just
that
think
could
they're,
affect anything really.
No, I don't think so either. I just think they're trying to point out to the Cubs, be careful what you say, because if the Cubs say the wrong thing, they could be
Sure.
held in violation of the players' agreement. So,
Although this front office is rarely says the wrong thing.
sure.
I mean, I'm talking about
According to us
Jed.
rah-rahs, they don't.
Right. Well, I mean, they're. I'm just saying they're pretty calculated,
Yeah.
and they're careful about how they word things and what they say and everything.
And and everybody obviously there they know the deal, and they know what's happening. I mean, you might hear from Boris a little bit. He'll probably make a little noise, but
Well, and that's his job.
there's nothing he can do. And you look at him, like a 2021 contract for Chris Bryant. If he's as good as we expect him to be, that's a lot of money for them. So, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
Who
I
knows
think
what free agent contracts are in 2021.
right. I'm sure it'll be pennies on the dollar compared to what it is now.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll be real. You can probably get them for like $5 million.
that's right.
Yeah, I think I think it's going to be interesting too. I mean, you're kind of talking about what happens after spring training, but I'm really interested. He's going to get a lot of playing time
Sure.
during spring training, and so I'm interested in seeing how he does, especially in the first couple of innings when batters are facing players that are usually major league starters just for their first at bat or two. I mean, those are the at bats that I'm interested in watching Bryant to see how he does. I think it'll be interesting to look at his strikeouts at the end of spring training and see what percentage of strikeouts came from what caliber of pitchers and things like that.
Yeah. And then there's the other side is what if, we talked about defensive reasons he might need some more time, but, what if they do start him at third and he looks amazing? Then what do you do? It's going to be even tougher to say, well, we need Mike Olt over there.
We got this Stella kid.
Yeah. They seem better options at this point.
Well, I mean,
So-
you can't, but I mean, he does have a body that, I guess you assume that eventually, even if he starts at third base, career-wise, he's probably going to end up in the outfield. Yeah, I mean, I just don't. I think
so.
everything that the Cubs come up with is fairly, obviously not the reason that he would be sent to Iowa. But at the same time, until something changes, with the way that these contracts work and everything like that. I mean, I think this is what you get when you have a setup like this. So.
Yep. These are the rules in the agreement. So.
Right.
But
Andy,
at the same time, though, it's like here I point out all this like contract stuff like as the most interesting topic of spring training. I mean, I'm not that interested in contract BS. I would much rather just see Chris Bryant play baseball.
Right.
But
right.
as far as most, I guess you did label it intriguing, or I don't know, I can't remember. So
Interesting.
yeah. So I don't want it to make it sound like I'm just sitting here reading about contracts and service time, when in reality I just want to see him play baseball. But it's a little more complex than that.
Well, and we are going to get to see a lot of him in spring training. So, that's. I don't remember exactly when he got sent to the minor league camp last year, but it seems like he wasn't with. It seems like he went fairly early. Like I don't think he was sticking around until the very end, but I don't remember. Andy, how about you?
Yeah. You ready for my topic, or you want me to chime in on Bryant?
Either way.
Whatever
All right.
you want.
Let's move on. One that I think is going to be fun to watch is Madden and the coaching staff and how they just kind of gel with the players that they have in camp, and then the players that end up making the 25-man. We know that we know what Joe Madden can do as a manager. I mean, it's no secret that he's had a lot of success. He's had 5 seasons in which the Rays were over 90 wins. So we know he's a good manager, but now he is in control of our team. And so it's going to be really fun to see how that goes. We know that he is an entertaining manager, that he is very strategic, that he is can be pretty cerebral sometimes. So it's going to be entertaining to watch. I'm looking forward to finally watching some post-game press conferences for once too. And so that's just something I'm pretty interested in. And John Maley and the guys who are going to be working with the hitters definitely have their work cut out for them. I mean, it's kind of nice for the coaching staff because they actually have the best team to work with that the Cubs have had over the time period that we've been doing this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way, it's really nice for them. Like it kind of takes some of the pressure off, but there's a lot of pressure there still to develop these players to their utmost potential. So I think that it's not like they can just go out there and be like, all right, we're just going to be successful. But I think there still is quite a bit of a burden on them when it comes to trying to get Javier Baez to, cut down on strikeouts or, whatever, all the myriad problems that are potentially facing them that they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they manage. I mean, I don't think you're going to see like a snapshot of Joe Madden as a manager during spring training as far as like on the field stuff goes, just because it's spring training.
Yeah, we'll be like, why is he changing pitchers so much?
Right.
This is ridiculous.
I can't believe he's bringing in that guy.
But I mean,
inning. He's already pulling the starter.
I mean, kind of the thing that I'm talking about more is, or focusing on more is stuff like the Respect 90 message,
Right.
that he's starting out camp with, and just really focusing on making sure players hustle. I mean, it's not like we haven't heard something like that before, but it just seems like he is able to give players something a little bit more concrete, maybe, than other managers have in the past. It's something a little bit less abstract, I think that Ricky Renneria can talk about hustle, but it's always kind of in abstract terms, and so Madden is just like good at coming up with like these little, I don't know, catchphrases and stuff that are easy for players to cling to and remember. So it's
For
just,
anybody that hasn't been paying attention and hasn't heard everything about Respect 90, do you want to give a quick explanation of what that
sure,
is?
yeah, it's painted down the first baseline in on their training field, right? Does that sound right?
I don't know. I didn't see that, but
Yeah. Anyway, from what I know, that they basically painted Respect 90 down the first baseline there at the training facility, and what it means is that just basically, if you he kind of explained it as what you put into something determines what you get out of it, and so if you are digging out every single hit that or potential hit that you get, you're gonna be successful, I guess. Man, I really struggled with that. It just basically means hustle all the time.
right, respect that first 90 feet.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see if that actually, how that happens, if that happens, and if Castro stands at home after a little, poorly hit grounder, what will happen, or
Exactly, because we've
how will that be
heard
addressed?
managers harp on hustle all the time, and then we still have players loafing out of the box and stuff. So,
But this is kind of a different way of presenting it, though. It's not
yeah.
that it's not going to be that you have to hustle, or fans like to bring up, you make this many millions of dollars and you can't hustle, 3 times a game or 2 times a game. But I think it's more of like your success. You'll be more successful if you respect the 90.
Yeah, he's encouraging them to take ownership, a little bit more, and making it more of a cultural thing, perhaps.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
kind of what I was trying to say with the abstract versus concrete thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of cheat here and throw out a few storylines into one. I'll call it the second base situation. I'm interested in seeing how things will play out with this position, but then there's also several players that are kind of covered by that topic. First off, Javier Baez. I don't really know what to expect from Javi this year. I'll have to say that my expectations are fairly low. It's not necessarily that I've given up on Baez, but I really do think that after what we saw last year, he's obviously got a lot of work to do with the plate. His potential and the reputation, those are the things that make him so interesting. In my interview with Sahadev Sharma, he explained the Winter League strikeouts that Baez had. If you haven't listened to that, that's a good conversation, and he gives us a little bit of insight on that issue. If I had to guess, I would think that we probably won't see him strike out as much in spring training because of the level of competition, and that it will be lower. He'll be facing pitchers that will be in the minors, and he's already demonstrated that he can hit that level of pitching. So I think the Baez hitting moonshots in spring training, that's not an indication of where he's really at or what he'll be if he starts the season with the Cubs rather than in Iowa. I'm just more interested in seeing his approach and how he controls the strike zone. And I think while spring training homers will provide like momentary excitement, I guess, I just don't think that's an indication of his progress and where he's at as a player right now. And then also falling into the second base topic, and that's just because I want him to, is Alcantara. You could probably put him in with the outfielders, but Alcantara looks like he could be one of those super utility players with, he has experience at shortstop and second base and center field. I think what I enjoyed most about watching him in 2014 was his kind of sneaky power, I guess. But he ended the season with a slash line of 205, 254, 367. Most of the projections, Pacoda and others, expect Alcantara to be more productive this year. But I'm really just interested in seeing how Madden will use Alcantara this season. And I wouldn't say he's the most interesting storyline, but I just kind of wanted to throw him in here because of his potential use at second base. And then the last player I'm throwing in here too is Tommy La Stella. In case you had forgotten about La Stella, in all the hype around Cubs prospects and everything, he came over to the Cubs from the Braves in exchange for Arodys Vizcaino, and also 3 international signing bonus slots.
And people should
his-
know that La Stella is Spanish for the Stella. I don't know if you guys knew that. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Okay.
What kind of throws me off is it's L.A. space Stella. It's not all together. I don't know.
It's not La
something
Stella altogether.
And I'm drinking a Stella,
Oh, nice.
so it all comes together.
He made his MLB debut with the Braves last season. He got into 93 games, 360 plate appearances. He had a slash line of 251, 328, 317. So obviously not a lot of power. He has a very low strikeout rate, just over 11% last season. Takes a good number of walks. So La Stella can be a good second base option if Baez starts in Iowa. And then he's also an option at third base if, as we expect, and as we talked about, Bryant starts in Iowa, and if Olt is struggling, which seems like a scenario that's not completely out of the picture.
It's very much in the picture.
But La Stella is he's another guy I'm really interested in. I'm interested in seeing how he fits in with the Cubs, but I'm also interested in seeing just how he plays, in spring training. I mean, I think a lot of these things we're talking about probably could be considered things we're interested in for this season, but because I'm not familiar at all with La Stella, I've probably only seen him play a couple of times and wasn't paying any attention to him. I'm just interested in seeing like what he produces in spring training and what.
Well, and he looks to me like, and this isn't really regarding the second base defensive issues, but he looks to me like that late inning pinch hitter with good plate discipline kind of guy too. If he's not starting, because you look around the roster and he seems to fit that role pretty well, given his walk and on base percentage.
Right. Yeah. And 11% strikeout rate is, when you're comparing that to some 40 of Baez, and Bryant has had a fairly high strikeout rate too, which is to be expected from those power hitters. But it's also good to have somebody that's going to, make the pitcher work a little bit more and get on base more. So, Kurt, moving on to your second topic.
My second is another one we've kind of hit on a few times, but it's the back end of the rotation. Who's going to fill that number 5 spot? I think it's pretty safe to say, Lester, Arrieta, Hamill, and Hendricks are your top 4, and then who fills that 5th spot. There's a lot of competition there, and Travis Wood, Edwin Jackson, if he stays in competition, Tsuyoshi Wada, who did have some hamstring soreness recently, but I guess he threw, and Jacob Turner, who I think hasn't really shown as much as far as last year, but has a huge upside, and then you've got Felix Dubront and Eric Jokic. So there's a ton of options. They're really deep left-handed group, with Wood, Wada, Dubront, and Jokic. So obviously they can't all, your left-handed talent is pretty deep at that 5th spot. But then that's what I kind of expect. I don't know. It's hard for me to pick one of them, but given that we haven't seen it, it's kind of nice that you have that kind of depth at the 5th spot because somebody's going to really earn it in spring training.
Boy, for me, I would really like to see. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'd really like to see the Cubs do everything they can to hang on to Jacob Turner, just because like you said, his upside is pretty great, and he doesn't have any options left.
Mhm.
And so he does present a little bit of a problem. I mean, if they want to send him to Iowa, they're going to have to try to, sneak him through waivers or something? Like, it's kind of a tough situation with them.
Well, and I think you're right. And if you put him on waivers, somebody's probably going to pick him up, just like the Cubs did. So I think he's pretty much stuck on the roster all year. But I agree that I like him in that spot, at least to start and to see what he can do, and give him a few more starts, because I like we've talked about, he does have huge upside. I think more than these other guys, and then you've still got plenty of insurance in your bullpen with and if Wada, maybe, I don't know how Wada's deal is structured, but I imagine if he goes to Iowa, he's a good sort of injury backup. Jackson we'll talk about more later, and Travis Wood I'll talk about again more later, but I don't expect him to even be on this team for the whole season. So and then you still got Dubront and Yoke. If Jackson isn't, could be sort of your long man in the bullpen, or also again injury backup. So it's nice to have this kind of depth in that spot.
Well, can I jump in with mine, Andy? Can I jump ahead of you there?
Yeah, go
Can I cut
ahead.
in line? I'm just going to, because I am talking about Edwin Jackson, which Kurt you mentioned, and I really, for I guess all of the storylines of ours that we're talking about that kind of bleed over into the regular season, this is a story, like a purely spring training storyline, that I am really interested in. I don't really know where to start with Edwin Jackson. I kind of feel like I'm crazy for still holding out hope for him, just because I want him to do well. I think that the Cubs rotation looks pretty good, and if you add what the Cubs were expecting from Edwin, then this rotation would be really good. I think that the odds of Edwin ever becoming that kind of pitcher again, are very low. But I would really like to see it. He's another player that Sahadev and I talked about in that episode a few weeks ago. He had some explanations of what went wrong. I don't know if a rotation spot is even a possibility. And I don't think that this is going to be a results-based decision, like I think it, similar to the way I don't think it's going to be about results with Baez necessarily. Jackson will be coming into games in the later innings facing AAA and AA batters. The Cubs are going to need to see the consistent mechanics, the consistent delivery, and those are going to give us a better idea of, and the Cubs more importantly than us, a better idea of if a rotation spot is possible. It's going to be that consistency stuff rather than, he's striking out AA batters and not giving up runs. That doesn't really matter. So I guess he's on this list for me just because it's kind of a last hope type of thing, and I think it would be just a hell of a comeback if he could get it figured out, and if he was good enough for that fifth spot, I think that would make a good rotation. I mean, it is a good rotation, but I think that would, if he could be at times flashes of a number 3 pitcher, then I don't know. I understand that it's not going to happen.
No, I think we're all sort of rooting for him because of, and we've talked about he's a nice guy. He's always owned up to it, all that stuff. Like he's not a jerk. So you want him to do well, but the reality, and one of the things that Sahadev said that kind of struck me is, well, maybe he's just not that good anymore. And that's also another explanation for what's happening is,
Right.
We're looking for mechanical issues and control things, but maybe he's just kind of lost it. And that would be unfortunate, but it could be what we're looking at.
And Andy, you established on last week's or 2 weeks ago on the episode that the way that Cubs fans have treated him was quote unquote sucky.
Yeah, that wasn't the best adjective to use. I mean, maybe something like reprehensible would have been better, but
Let's go
I
with
like
sucky.
to keep it formal and academic. So, with sucky.
So that's Edwin for me. I think it'll be interesting because I I feel like we have like we're learning more about Joe Madden every day. In how I guess we're learning more what the media is telling us about him. But I don't really know how he will handle a guy like Edwin Jackson, and I don't know if Edwin does look good in spring training and does look consistent. Is he going to want to use him? I don't. Those are the things I don't know about Joe Madden, and so that's another thing that I think could be interesting about this whole situation. Or Andy, I guess you're next up.
Sure. Yeah. One of my other ones is finally we get to for a lot of Cub fans. This is going to be our first chance to see Addison Russell in action in the Cubs organization. So it's his first camp in the organization, and he's just an exciting player. You know, he's considered by most sources to be prospect number 2, and then by some even number 1 in the Cubs organization. And just a really exciting player. He can get on base, he can hit, he can play defense really, really well. And so it's just I'm just looking forward to finally getting to see him in action, really.
Yeah, me too.
And so he's a guy that could hit well in a number of different places in the order. A lot of scouts see him as probably developing more power as time goes on. He's not a super fast guy, but he is able to flash some speed out there. So just an exciting player, and I'm so glad to finally get to see him.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about that over the last, during this offseason, was that because the Cubs traded for him and brought him into, he started off in Tennessee, right? I think he did.
No,
was he ever in Daytona?
He started out in Tennessee. He was never in Daytona.
Right. So I mean, because he skipped the Midwest League or wasn't with the Cubs in the Midwest League,
Right.
Which is usually our opportunity to see Cubs prospects. I'm really looking forward to seeing him because I feel like I've although I didn't get to see Bryant, I saw one game, I guess, in Iowa, but I don't know, just because I saw plenty of Baez and Schwarber some and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Russell in person because you just get a better. Not that we're clearly not scouts or anything like that.
Well,
but you just
speak for yourself.
But you just kind of get a sense of what that player's like and what how they play and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I can't even visualize him at the plate very well or in the field. So
Right.
just looking forward to having that mental image, I guess.
Imagine watching a player that can hit for some average. That'd be pretty sweet.
That'd be.
And the dude, like I said, can get on base at a good clip. It's not like his game is flawless. I mean, he has a pretty good strikeout potential, but man, he's going to be an exciting player to watch.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear from you guys too because I can't remember where I even heard it. But how about his bat speed? Basically, what I read was that if Baez wasn't such a freak, that we'd be hearing about Russell's bat speed as being really
Russell,
stellar.
He has really quick hands apparently, and so maybe you're right. Maybe just because of Baez, he doesn't quite get the attention that he should in that regard. But
well, and those are the types of things. I mean, MILB.TV has made it easier to see things, and just with the
see them grainy feeds when webcams.
Exactly at 10 frames per second. So I think there is footage out there, but you haven't seen a lot. I don't know if I've ever really seen a good video of his, probably batting practice, but I don't know. That's what I'm talking about, is that you've been able to see some things because technology is improving and we're able to have access to some stuff, but at the same time, it's not like seeing a player in person.
Yeah.
So.
And then, in my head, there's just some things not quite meshing where, he's labeled as either the 1 or 2 best prospect. And we've talked so much about these other guys, and we, like you said, we haven't seen him yet, and it's hard for my brain to reconcile the fact that here's this guy who's like one of the best in baseball as far as prospects, and I know nothing about him. Like, it's almost like I discount him. I don't even think about him.
Right.
Hopefully he'll have a little more presence this year and himself.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to our third round here, the last three. What's the last thing you're paying attention? Not the last thing the last thing you're bringing up today, Kurt.
Mine is the trades that may still happen. Kind of touched on it earlier with Travis Wood, but I'll start with Wellington. Or I guess I'll start overall. I think it looks like the Cubs are going to make trades that are going to move guys that don't fit in this roster. And I'm not saying these will happen in spring training, but they might. So they're going to move guys that don't quite fit rather than sort of acquiring to fill a roster need. And I think Wellington's probably the most obvious because, when you trade for Montero and you sign Ross as sort of your veteran backup, doesn't really seem to be any room left for him given his age. And the fact that he's capable of playing every day, doesn't really look, make sense to keep him even as like the number 2 catcher. I suppose you could platoon him with Montero and then throw Ross out there whenever Lester pitches, but like I said, it doesn't seem to make a ton of sense.
Did you see his comments earlier in the week?
His?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
I think somebody asked him about, kind of the situation of, what's going to happen. And he said that, the Cubs drafted him when he was 17, and he wants to play with them and wants to win there. So I thought that was like kind of a mature,
classy.
Remark. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think he'll get moved. He's in his arbitration years, but he's still under control. I would think he'd be pretty appealing to somebody because he's got a really good bat. He's still fairly young at 27. We've talked about his pitch framing issues. He's the worst in the league at that, but probably room for improvement, but not a ton. So I think, there'll be somebody that will give you something for him, but you don't expect to get a haul for him.
And Diner Navarro is available too now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's the best catcher. I mean, he probably still is the best option, but I think if it makes it a little bit tougher that there's another catcher that is out there in the mix too.
And from what I've read, I think the Cubs are just waiting for the market to sort of level off or open up and kind of see who needs something. Because when you go into spring training and somebody gets hurt, then the moves will get done. The other guy I sort of think will get moved is Travis Wood. He's not making a ton of money, but he is also in his arbitration years. He's making, or I think he's arbitration eligible. He's at $5.6 million next year, so it's not a ton of money for a starting pitcher, but he does have some experience, and they have a lot of left-handed options, like I touched on earlier, for that 5th spot. I guess I could see him making the team out of spring training just so he can get some starts under his belt, maybe try to up his value a little bit, and then trade him. But he doesn't seem to fit into the long-term goals of this team. So I think he'll probably get moved too.
Yeah, I'd say so. Andy, you're up next.
All right, my final story that I care about and everything else I don't care about would be just finally seeing the Cubs with a guy that's kind of I guess they finally have a leadoff hitter. We've watched so many teams that don't really have a true leadoff option, and I suppose some people might say that Dexter Fowler isn't necessarily your prototypical leadoff man, but he brings the tools that you want in a leadoff man, and it just seems like the Cubs have just kind of shoehorned people in there, just for ever since ever since we started podcasting, really. Yeah. So I guess Chris Coughlin did a pretty good job in that role in Bonifacio last season, so we got a little bit of a taste of it, but just Dexter Fowler he can get on base. He has a career 366 OBP, and last season he got on base at a 375 clip. He hits for about the same average-wise as, say, Chris Coughlin does, so you would probably like that to be a little bit better than it is. But and then the other thing, too, is that he doesn't steal a lot of bases. But that would be like one thing he would bring to the table over Chris Coughlin, for example, is that he is still a threat when he's on base. He only stole 11 bases last season, but he's stolen 94 bases in a 7-year career, whereas Chris Coughlin's stolen like 40 or something like that in a 6-year career. So I'm just excited to see finally. I don't know, like whoever's hitting second, Baez maybe, and Rizzo and those guys come up to bat with somebody on base more often.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the other nice thing about Fowler, he does get a lot of extra base hits, so if he leads off with a double or triple and puts himself in scoring position, that's also pretty exciting with the lineup coming after him.
Right, and not even, you can kind of, looking past, I guess, the stolen bases, if he's fast on the bases and a good base runner, you're right. If he can lead off with a double and somebody comes through with a single and you're up 1-0 right away. I mean, didn't Madden talk about?
Yeah, he really emphasized how
being up early in the first inning.
Yeah, he it's one of his goals for the team is to try as much as possible to be the team that scores first, and that seems really obvious, but he just talked about how, the statistics show that if you can score first, you're gonna have way better of a chance to win.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to watching Dexter Fowler this year. And although I'm not sure he's like a prototypical, I mean, I don't think he's like maybe an ideal leadoff hitter. He's the closest we've had in, like you said, Andy, quite a while.
Yeah.
My last thing here is injuries. I have to end it with a downer, a downer topic. The PECOTA projections and all the other projections have the Cubs right there as kind of a borderline playoff team. I still think that's a bit optimistic, but I'd really love to see it. But I think that the Cubs need to stay healthy for this to happen, and that starts in spring training. Although action hasn't even started yet, news of injuries around baseball is trickling in. Logan Watkins got injured before position players even needed to report to Mesa. That was Achilles, right? Yeah. And I believe he's done for the year.
Yes.
Yep.
So, God forbid, but imagine if that happened to any of the players the Cubs are relying on to get them to be a team that's around 500. I hate to even
talk about it. Thank you for not saying a name.
Well, I was about to, but okay. Let me see if I can get through this without saying any individual names. I mean, the Cubs have a good corner infielder, and think about how much the team has relied on him and will rely on him, and imagine this team without him, both offensively and defensively. And the Cubs, they signed a big free agent pitcher this offseason, and if that person was to get injured, I
might as well say the name.
Yeah,
this is more fun.
His name starts with a J and ends with on Lester.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I hate to talk about this stuff or even, consider the hypotheticals, but I think because this team is such a borderline team and that's if everything goes well, and I think that we really have to hope for a season with no significant injuries, and the first step to a season with no significant injuries is breaking camp with no significant injuries. So I think that's the storyline that I will be nervously paying attention to throughout the month of March.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing Castro get a full season under his belt. I mean, last year was pretty close, but
yeah. Before we move on, Bob from the UK, who typically is not able to join these live broadcasts just because it would be like 2 a.m. for him.
They're 6 hours
ahead.
Yeah,
I think it'd be 2:30 in the morning usually when we record. But he is watching, and so yeah, thanks for joining us, Bob. He said I didn't ask for any listener questions this week, but he did put one in the chat, and I thought we could talk about it. He said, any thoughts on bringing Sammy back into the fold as some sort of ambassador?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly indifferent about it. I did see the articles recently about Theo saying that they're open to welcoming him back, but I don't know. I was never a Sammy fan before, and I guess I'm not really a huge fan now. So I don't feel too hurt by him being left out of most things.
Yeah, I made some comment on Twitter earlier in the week about how, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was kind of a I don't understand why anybody really cares type thing. And I had a couple people respond and point out that I think they were probably a little bit younger than us and became Cubs fans during that era, and he is a major reason that they're Cubs fans. And I guess I get that. I didn't really think too much about that, just because Sammy isn't a reason that I'm a Cubs fan. But honestly, I just don't care. I mean, I don't. I think you bring back guys that have something to add, and if Sammy has something to add, then sure, why not? Yeah. But if he doesn't, then I don't see a point in bringing him back just because he was a player that put up big numbers. I mean, I think while he did put up big numbers, and I think you can contribute a lot of fan interest and probably a lot of money to the organization because of Sammy, at the same time, there's a lot of other negatives that are, I guess, attached to him and his name, so that I don't obviously need to go through here.
When he's got so much, I mean, you look at who the sort of ambassadors have been for so long with Ernie and Billy and Fergie and Ron, before he passed away. It's like you're up against some pretty stiff competition, Sammy. So it would be hard for me to sort of like as those guys get older and and Ernie passes away, and for guys like Sammy to be the ones replacing them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. They're not exactly of this. He's not in the same class as those other guys, I don't think. And I mean, yeah, for a myriad of reasons.
Well, what about this? I mean, he comes back. He's like, "Hey guys, look at what you can do after you get a big hit instead of flipping your bat. You can hop."
I'd rather see the flips.
Oh, really? All
yeah.
Right. All right.
Corey in love with the bat flip.
Well, you guys are kind of like 90s kind of guys, I guess. You're stuck in the 90s with the hop. Yeah, I don't know. I just, I guess I understand a little bit of why, because those people pointed out that. I guess I hadn't really considered it, but I just don't care. I mean, I think they brought in Manny because he had something to add, I just don't know, I guess, what Sammy would do. Is he going to be in the fold just so he can be considered an all-time Cubs great? Is that what it is, or is it like, I don't know.
Yeah, he seems to. I mean, I don't know the truth, but Sammy seems to be in it more for the self-promotion than the bigger baseball picture. But that's just my opinion.
Remember when he started a Pinterest page?
Photos.
I forgot all about that. Sammy's yellow sweater. Oh, I wonder if that page is still active. I need to look at it. I'm not, I'm into social media and stuff. I don't really understand Pinterest, but I don't think it's a place where you post pictures of yourself. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't, at this point, I don't understand it, but I also don't care. It's not like if suddenly, I thought it was a little bit weird that he wasn't at that 100th anniversary game last year. Like it kind of felt like he should be there for that sort of thing. I mean, if like Ryan Dempster was out there, it felt like Sammy Sosa kind of belonged there. But I think there's also a lot behind the scenes that we don't know. And like you would think with a new front office and a new ownership and everything, like you would think those things would have kind of like whatever tension was there, maybe it would have fallen by the wayside, which leads me to believe that there are still people there. Maybe it's Crane Kenny. I don't know. Someone is still there that holds this grudge, or is a reason for some tension, I guess.
Well, and I think hiring Manny kind of puts it at the forefront because you can't use the PED excuse.
Right.
You know,
That's a good
like,
point.
Although there's more.
Because Sammy is
but-
more important to the Cubs than Manny, as far as legacy. So you can't just say you're not inviting him back for those reasons.
Right. But Manny never walked out on the Cubs during a game. I don't know. I think there's that's what I'm saying. I just think there's more there in history in that relationship.
Probably.
And Bob comments on the in the chat. He says overall indifference. Then fair enough.
It just took us like 15 minutes to get to.
I really don't care. All right. Well, if you enjoy our podcast and you shop on Amazon, and we're going to stop right there because these batteries are dying and I don't want to lose that file. Yeah. It's a bad thing about living nowhere near a store to buy batteries.
I need to get you a pack at Costco. You know, they come in those giant
Well,
packs.
I mean, I can get the plug-in thing for this, but it's like
yes.
way more expensive than it needs to be. Like, I think it's like
Yeah.
40 or 50 bucks. And I'm just like, I don't know. What's that?
That is stupid.
That's a stupid
Yeah,
price.
I probably will get one. Another reason that I kind of like having batteries is that if our power goes out for whatever reason, we don't lose everything. Like that keeps going and then I can stop it. Where if you are relying on power from the wall, even if you have batteries in these things and the power goes out, you lose it.
Ooh, that's scary.
Yeah. So, and I mean, because we use Google Plus, there's always that backup there. But I don't know. I'll buy one. I've been putting it off.
You bought the only electronic item that does not come with a plug-in.
Well, it's because they want to charge you the extra 40 or 50 bucks for it. All right, here we go. If you enjoy our podcast and you shop on Amazon, you can help us pay the bills by going to ivmv.com and clicking on the Amazon link on the right side of the page to do your shopping. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and it does help us quite a bit. We do have some iTunes reviews to read, so because of that, I'm going to play a little Chuck Me and Gioni Feel So Good. It took me a second there to find it. I reorganized my soundboard, so I'll have to get Chuck back into my muscle memory whatever there. Okay. This first one is by I guess it's Dado3, and the title is Informative and Entertaining. And Dado3 says, love this podcast. It's down to earth, informative, and so entertaining. Never expected it to be funny sometimes too. I could listen all day.
Wow.
And the second one here is from Mr. Lane, and this says, great podcast. It says, love listening to these guys talk Cubs baseball, the type of guys any Cubs fan could sit and chat with. Great stuff, and keep up the good work. So, both of these are very nice reviews. Thank you to Dado3 and Mr. Lane. And you can leave us ratings and reviews in iTunes or Stitcher, and those help us with our rankings in those platforms and stuff, and it helps other Cubs fans find our podcast. And another way that Cubs fans can find our podcast is if you share our podcast with them. So if you know any Cubs fans, tell them what we're doing here. You know, as we're about to start the 2015 season, I think casual fans are starting to get a little bit more interested, and so this is a good time to, for people to find us and to start listening to our podcast. So please tell them about us. All right, well, it is time for the Internet Muscle Flex. I don't know if we could ever outdo our last regular episode with the Pray Tell, but we're going to go ahead and give it a try. Do each of you guys have muscle flexes this week?
I do.
have one.
Okay. I have several. So let me read a couple, if that's okay.
And you were just complaining about how hard they are to find.
Well, yeah, they are kind of. You have to fish a little bit more. There just aren't the comments on Cubs.com that there used to be. So, did you guys come from Cubs.com too, or did you go to the social media stuff?
Mine's from Instagram.
Okay, that's kind of been your go-to lately.
Yeah.
I got Cubs.com.
All right. Well, here's I'll read two. This one, and neither of these are like really internet muscle flexes, as in they're not like flexing their knowledge on other people or their perceived knowledge on people or the Cubs or anything. I don't know. It's those comments that just kind of make you shake your head, I guess. So this one says, this was on the tampering article about the Cubs tampering charges with Joe Madden, or the not charges. I should clarify there. Allegations by the Rays, I guess. So all the Theo apologists said there was no way Theo was dirty. I did not say he was, but it looks very suspect. He is doing his best to ruin our team. What? He's trying. He's trying.
He's doing his best. They obviously are worse than they were last year. So.
Right. And here's one that I think you guys are going to really enjoy. I almost feel bad reading this one. Little off subject, but it would be nice to change the name of Wrigley Field to Ernie Banks Park. I know. There's no money in it, but I'm just saying.
Oh, man.
And then, once they spread his ashes there.
I don't know.
Oh, man.
All right. So do you guys go ahead, whoever wants to go next.
You want me to?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Mine comes from the article called Durable Montero Wants to Be a Workhorse. And it's regarding Wellington. And I want to do my best to read this. I don't think I'm going to really put out the energy because this comment has 13 exclamation points. So try to take my energy level and boost it by like 10. So this person says, as long as Castillo is around, I'd like Montero to face every righty and Castillo face every lefty. That would make sense given their averages versus those two type of pitchers. Ross can catch a token once a month if Lester if Lester has to have that fix, I guess. Really though, as long as Welly is around, Ross should be in his ear about pitch framing techniques and teach him. Someone is about to get a really good catcher, while the Cubs will balance the next season with two has-beens. Of all the moves Theo has made, this one still don't register with me unless they keep Welly and do exactly this. And then kind of somebody flexes on him, which in a kind of a hilarious way. The person after them says, "It does make sense, just not to you, Welly rah rah."
I had no idea Welly had rah-rahs.
Yeah, well, this guy really likes Welly. So, or this
Unless
person,
they do
I shouldn't say guy.
exactly this.
Yeah, exactly this. Yeah. It's kind of interesting that we have commenters who are just so in love with Wellington, they write like the plan.
All right, Andy, do you have a great one to finish with, or?
No, it's not that great. You want to go last?
Sure.
Okay. So here's mine. On Instagram, I guess the Cubs Instagram account regrammed, is how you call it. A selfie that Javier Baez took with Manny Ramirez and Jorge Soler in the background. And so all the comments on there were just really positive overall. And then just one stood out to me. It was just, don't strike out so much. That's it.
Problem solved.
He had no idea. Wait, he goes to Madden.
He responded.
Yeah, he goes to Madden. Hey, Coach, I saw this on my Instagram.
We have to try this out.
Is this something I need to... What is... I mean, is somebody not telling me? I
just thought it was beautiful in its simplicity.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So this one was on the... I mean, I knew there was going to be some gold in here. No pun intended. Well, that's a little foreshadowing, I guess. On this article, which is entitled, Cubs owner Ricketts hopes to reward fans' loyalty. So you know there's going to be some good
yeah,
stuff.
You know there's going to be.
So here's what the commenter says. The only way that well, I'm going to start over because this is one of those that has like typos in it, and so
You
Well,
should read
difficult.
as is.
No, I can't. Well, maybe I will. Should I?
Yeah, read
You
as
have to
is.
give the true character of the post.
Okay. The only way the fans like gold is if they have gold teeth. They will be lucky to make it out of the park with them intact. What a joke. We have enjoyed the 5th to last place gold and we have enjoyed the 5th to last place gold the last 4 years, Tommy. If last is first, does everyone get a gold medal? What a bunch of dopes coup fans are to fall for this garbage.
Oh man, what was the cold teeth thing? I don't understand.
Well,
Is-
That's the only way you're going to get treated like gold, is if you have gold teeth. That way they can take them from you.
I see.
Because you'll be lucky to make it out of the park with them intact.
Right.
What?
It's the price of admission. One gold tooth.
And I guess there's a lesson to be found in a comment like this, is that spell check isn't always your friend. I mean, maybe that's what happened there, with like coup fans.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But we're dopes for falling for this garbage.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
All right. Well, that is it for this week's episode. I'm going to start that over. Well, that does it for this week's episode. This episode was brought to you by our Patreon supporters, and a big thanks to our Hall of Fame level contributors, Jeremy, Dave, Dallas, Charles, Jane, Cass, Tony, Shane, Michael, John, Brian, and Richard. And our Patreon associate producers are Matthew Macer, Anthony Hutfliss, Joshua Hansen, and Ryan Shores. And we've had 2 new Patreon supporters come on board this week. Clay from, is it Mahomet? I don't know how you say that town.
I don't know either.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think it's Mahomet, Illinois, and Joe from Waterloo, Iowa. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do so through Patreon, which is like Kickstarter. We have several pledging levels, and they start as low as just $1 a month, and the perks get better at every level. And you can find our campaign at patreon.com/IVEnvy. That's patreon.com/IVEnvy. And I do want to mention, too, that we have our T-shirts available at IVEnvy.com/store. So, baseball starts this week. No games, and the next week will be televised, but Thursday and Friday's games will have an audio broadcast on MLB.com or on MLB at Bat app. And Saturday and Sunday's game will be on WBBM 780. And I'm not sure if the affiliates that are part of the Cubs radio network will be airing those games. I can't believe we get to listen to live baseball this week. That's going to be awesome. The off season is over, folks. So thank you for listening and downloading, and we'll be back next week to talk about the first handful of Cubs spring training games. And until then, go Cubs. Sorry, guys. The music playing. Well, we made it through.
We did.
Well, I was thinking with my battery situation.
Oh,
over here.
it's like, well, that was horrible, but we made it.
I was struggling to speak coherently today for some reason.
Yeah, I
Is it
think
the time of day.
I think that's what it was. I think at the end of the night, I'm just kind of like a little bit more loose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better than that damn baseball card episode.
That was pretty fun to listen to.
Yeah, actually, afterwards, after we were done with that one, I was thinking, man, that's probably kind of rough to listen to. But I don't know. Beth listened to it and she enjoyed it, and then I listened to a lot of it, and it wasn't as bad of listening as I thought. I guess
That's always what happens when you think it was a horrible episode, then you listen to it and it's like, well, it wasn't that bad.
Well, I think too, like that one was when I listened back to it, I heard a lot of stuff that I missed. Because we were four of us sitting around the table. Like there was a couple things Michael said that I missed live.
Yeah.
I thought it was fun though.
Yeah.
Well,
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna go outside and play in the snow.
oh yeah, Tawny took Mallory out there earlier with the dogs.
Yeah, Liam's excited. He took his nap and now he gets to go outside and play.
I think we got more than you guys.
We didn't get much recent. I mean, that original one we probably got 4 or 5 inches, and then now we have just like another 1/4 inch today, maybe.
Oh, last night we probably got about 3 or 4 inches last night and today.
All right, boys.
So, all right. Well, I will talk to you guys later.
All right, we'll see you.
See ya.
Bye.